Yep. Keep watching that so that we can know when Hill arrives. Okay, hello everyone. My name's Will. I was glad to be asked to be your MC tonight for this event. We are here at the U.S. Senate Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Michigan Peace Alliance and co-sponsored by the Lansing Area Peace Education Center, Coalition for a Free Palestine, Lansing For Palestine, and Greater Lansing DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. We've invited all of the U.S. Senate candidates to be here today. Hill Harper was going to be here with us in person, but then he had a last-minute invitation to speak at another event in Detroit, but he's going to be joining us momentarily, is our understanding, via Zoom. Actually, he just texted. He says he's working to get in. So that's good. I just want to say thanks to the Islamic Center for hosting this event. If folks need to use the bathroom, the women's bathroom is at the back of the gym between the two tables. There's a men's bathroom out in the hallway. And this forum is going to be focused on the issue of foreign policy, as you might expect, given the sponsoring groups. A very important issue every year, but especially this year in this very important Senate election. So I'm interested to hear what Mr. Harper has to say on these subjects. While we're waiting for Hill to log in, I think he says he's working to get through right now. Terry, do you want to come up and just say a quick word about Michigan Peace Alliance?
Thank you, Will. Terry Link, I'm the facilitator for the Michigan Peace Alliance. It's an organization, alliance. It's not really a formal organization. It's a network of about 26 different peace organizations around the state. Includes several chapters of Veterans for Peace, locally the Peace Education Center, the Greater Lansing United Nations Association, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, 3 chapters of that around the state, Citizens for Peace, Livonia. I'm going to forget the Michigan Peace Council, Peace Action of Michigan. Anyway, there's about 25. We get together once a month, and it's more often in between with emails to connect on ways that we can work together on issues of peace and fighting militarism and violence. There's no particular uniform thing that we believe in collectively. Every group is pushing on different issues. There's some groups working. Hiroshima anniversary is coming up in a couple of days. Several groups in the state are doing programs specifically on that, for example. But we all believe that violence is not the answer, that war is not the answer. And so collectively, we are working, especially in terms of the U.S. Senate seats, that if we can bring statewide pressure from all the different groups and the people in those communities on our senators, which we've been doing for a couple of years, it would be a good thing. So it was our idea initially to try to do this earlier in the primary season, and we didn't have much luck and it fell to the side, but we thank the other partners, DSA and others, that came in to help pull this together at the last minute. So at least we can hear from Mr. Harper on his positions. And I appreciate Will, as especially the Islamic Center, tossing in the technology, and hopefully we'll engage with Mr. Harper.
There is.
Representative Slotkin will show up and engage with us as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Let's just give a round of applause for all the hosts and co-hosts of the event. And I'm going to read them one more time for the benefit of our guest, Hill Harper, who I see has arrived us. Our wonderful sponsoring organizations here are the Michigan Peace Alliance, Lansing Area Peace Education Center, the Coalition for a Free Palestine, Lansing For Palestine, and Greater Lansing DSA. Thanks again one more time to our sponsors. And thank you, Mr. Hill Harper, for joining us. I see you're able to make it through the Zoom portal. So thank you so much for being here. How we're going to do this is, as I mentioned, we're going to be focused on the issue of foreign policy. We have some pre-prepared questions that were submitted by the sponsoring groups. I'm going to be reading those and asking for a response from our candidate. And then if you have additional questions that come to mind, You can write them on a piece of paper that are circulating out there in the audience, submit them to me. We're going to keep the questions coming from the podium just for ease of everything, especially in this hybrid format. We'll get into the first question right away, but I would like just to give the mic to Hill Harper to introduce himself before I start with the important questions.
Sure. Hey, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for hosting this important discussion. To me, this is what democracy looks like and should feel like. And, you know, I'll just say, just as a point of personal privilege, we've had innumerable number of candidate forums, of which my opponent did not show. We had multiple debates scheduled, of which she canceled. And even this last one somehow convinced the media to say that I canceled it, which is just, I can't explain to you how outrageous it is and how disrespectful it is to voters, how disrespectful it is to Michiganders, and to not want to inform people. So with that said, I'm Hill Harper, Democratic candidate for United States Senate. I am not a career politician, but I think in this moment, that's a very good thing. Some of the things I am a cancer survivor. I am a 32-year union member who was elected to the national board of my union to fight for fair contracts. I am a 7-year small business owner here in Detroit. I am a father of an 8-year-old who I just helped graduate out of 2nd grade, which is not easy because he does not like to sit down. I am a graduate of Brown University, where I studied sociology and economics, and I graduated as the valedictorian in my department. I then went to Harvard Law School, where I earned a Juris Doctorate with honors, and I went to the John F. Kennedy School of Government, where I received my master's in government and public administration. I hold 10 honorary doctoral degrees. I've written 4 New York Times bestselling books all about community empowerment and upliftment. I was the national spokesperson for the Innocence Project, which is why I am firmly against the death penalty. And I'm also against prosecutorial layering of charges and plea extortions. One of the things I want to do is reduce our mass incarceration population. We can get more into that if that's what someone wants to talk about. I'm also the national spokesperson for One Fair Wage since 2016. I had been that national spokesperson. We just had a huge victory last week through the Michigan Supreme Court, and we won a victory to raise the wage. We can also talk about that if folks want to talk about that. I'm very proud to have been the national ambassador for One Fair Wage and the One Fair Wage movement. And as a small business owner, the idea of them raising the wage against small business is a big lie. And also, I was the national spokesperson for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which is a voter protection agency. My Harvard Law School classmate eventually appointed me to the President's Cancer Panel, where I served on that body, working with then Vice President Biden's office in their moonshot to cancer, and working with the National Institute of Health on cancer policy. And I'm very proud that many of the cellular-based therapies that you see, we funded out of that office since 2011. And it was completely wiped out when the 45th president came in. And so all of that just gets you a sense of my background. I'm the son of 2 doctors. My mother was one of the first Black female anesthesiologists in the country, Dr. Marilyn Hill Harper, and my father was a psychiatrist who worked in the prison system. He's unfortunately passed away from cancer, and I've lived in Detroit for the past 8 years. Been raising my son here, and I'm running for United States Senate because so many people are hurting, and they don't feel that they're represented. And the fact is that they're not. You know, many people think that the reaction to the Obama presidency was the Tea Party, but I think that was the beard. I think the true reaction was Citizens United. And now that we're about a decade and a half in, we're seeing the true results of that in both sides of the aisle, where corporate PACs corporate influence and corporate collusion with our federal representatives are crushing the representation of people. And one of my big tenets is to end Citizens United and end the ability of special interest and corporate interest to manipulate our democracy such that their interests are put well ahead of the people. And with that, I look forward to this conversation, and I appreciate everyone taking the time on such a beautiful day to sit and talk about these very important issues we're going to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Yeah, beautiful day. I'm very glad to be inside. It's a hot one.
That means your air conditioning is working, so that's good.
Yeah. So we're going to be asking some difficult questions. We know that the world is in crisis right now, and there are people who are suffering all around the world as a result of U.S. foreign policy. And so we appreciate you coming here to face these questions, because we know these are exactly some of the questions that your opponent is most interested in avoiding. So very interested to hear what you have to say, but I want to appreciate you for coming here to deal with tough issues. So I'm going to begin with the first question submitted by the host organizations. We're going to dive right into it. The United States is the largest arms dealer in the world. And so as a U.S. Senator, what constraints would you seek to apply to U.S. weapons and their sale and use abroad? And specifically, do you support the call, which is now the evolving call of the ceasefire movement here in the United States, to cease arms sales to Israel in response to their conduct in genocide of Gaza?
Now, obviously, I was one of the first, not obviously, many of you may not even know this. I was one of the first Senate candidates in the country to call for ceasefire. And I look at any sale of arms and any use of weapons, and certainly American taxpayer weapons, through the lens of humanity, human rights, and certainly civil rights and justice and fairness. And so I am not in favor of the proliferation of American weapons in any conflict. And I often say this, there is no good war and there's no bad peace. The idea of how our tax dollars are spent certainly runs through the United States Senate. And when we think about that, I think that we have to think in terms of efficiency, also in terms of being good stewards of tax-paying dollars, and also doing the will of the people. You know, to be able to sit back and see what we've seen, 74% of Michigan Democrats are in favor of ceasefire, but less than 10% of federal delegation has called for it. Clearly, there's a disconnect there, and I think all of us understand what that is. And so for me, I am there as a senator to do the will of the people and to act in accordance of the will of the people. And I don't believe in this idea of, oh, we're electing someone to send them off to the U.S. Senate for 6 years to hopefully do what we think they should do, and maybe they will, and then we'll see them at a fundraiser and take a picture and say what we thought of what they did. The idea to me is that we're sitting in these seats together and we're going there collectively. And there's no question that there has to be more balanced fight in the U.S. Senate around our foreign policy spending, as well as the relationship between our tax dollars and DoD contractors, Department of Defense contractors. And so what does that mean? It means that I will not rubber stamp the National Defense Authorization Act, which has been done, and I refuse to do that. I would have supported Mark Pocan and Barbara Lee's people over the Pentagon, which they presented as, and I hate to say this, is only a $100 billion reduction in military spending. And I will fight against the notion, that anytime you want to restrict and decrease military spending, somehow that is anti your military troops. It's not true. I went to Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, Quantico, Virginia. I never took the commission. I did not serve, but I graduated from Marine Corps Officer Candidate because I thought I was going to need help paying for grad school. I ended up winning a different fellowship. I didn't take the commission. But I'll tell you this, I have so much respect for our folks who serve in the military. And every time we do automatic national defense authorization increases, which we do every year, by the way, we rubber stamp, those increases are going to Department of Defense contractors. They are not going to our military. And so don't let someone try to tell you you're anti-patriotic if you want to restrict the NDAA and pull back on Pentagon spending. And so I will fight against that notion as well. I'm as patriotic as anybody else. And so with that said, obviously, I think that you can hear me saying that I will not be someone who's going to sign on to things as usual and things as they have been as far as our spending in that regard. And I won't be a party to that. There's no way to use conjecture and say, okay, well, what if it's this? And what if it's that? And what if it's this? Every situation, I think, is unique and different, and we can talk about different situations, and I'm happy to do that. But I can tell you this, as a general broad swash, I will fight against NDAA increases because it's been increased and rubber stamped far too long, and the only beneficiaries have been Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and many other Department of Defense contractors who ostensibly have federal representatives and congressional members in their pocket.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Appreciate that, especially regarding the NDAA increases and the Pocan-Lee bill. That would be very significant to have a senator on that line in the United States Senate. I do want to circle back to the present question around the matter of arms to Israel. The grassroots ceasefire movement, I think, has moved into a place of realizing that there is not going to be a ceasefire in Gaza unless the U.S. uses the leverage it has to actually deny Netanyahu something that he wants. And the arms are at the top of that list. And so
Let me correct you. It's not really the arms. I think people have to understand what happens. We allocate dollars, and then what happens is those dollars are used to then buy the arms from our DoD right. contractors. So it's not, and I want people to understand this, it's not that we are taking arms and sending them. The money, your and our tax dollars are being used to purchase them. And so it's basically, the question is not about restricting sending arms. The question is restricting dollars. And so the answer is yes. I will not sign on to more unfettered money going to Israel for that purpose. Why? Because billions and billions and billions of dollars have been sent unrestricted already. And we're seeing what's happening there now. And if we truly want to hopefully have a ceasefire, we want to make sure that we are using every means we have to impact that condition, which means stop sending the money.
Thank you. I heard some snaps out here in the audience for that. Let's move on to the next question. What do you believe are the greatest security issues the U.S. faces, and why?
I think the greatest security issues we face right now is our democracy being completely torn apart. And a lot of that I've already kind of said it before, a lot of it has to do with the unlimited, unfettered dark money in our politics. And the idea that is determinative of outcome of representation. And so if you can the best way to destabilize any country is to rip it apart from the inside. And that's what we're seeing happen in our country. And it's happening at the upper establishment power broker level. It's not, we keep hearing how divided we are. I've been to all 83 counties in Michigan. We're not as divided as we are disconnected. And I'll tell you why. And I'll give you an example. I was outside of Midland talking to a farmer who made it very clear to me, he's a Trump voter, very clear. And I said, well, what do you want fundamentally? And he said, listen. And he said, I want a safe and quality place for my son or my kids to go to school. I want a living wage, affordable housing. I don't want to get beaten in the face by inflation. I don't want to be able to take a vacation without going into lifetime debt. I want to be able to go fishing and eat, and eat the fish, that come out of the water. These types of things. I asked a single mom on the east side of Detroit at Mack and Drexel, what do you want? Well, I want a safe and quality place for my kid to go to school. I want affordable food. I want affordable housing. I want a living wage. We all fundamentally want the same things in our country. Yet folks who have an interest in power maintenance, in absolute power maintenance, see the opportunity to divide and dissect, whether it's through racist tropes or misogyny or through misinformation and disinformation. And I do believe foreign entities are aiding this through technology. And so the true divisions within our country are being exploited to tear apart in many ways the foundations of our democracy. And I believe the number one way to protect that is to end Citizens United and to have full-scale campaign finance reform. And we could talk about what that would look like for me, and there's obviously many other things we got to do, but that's my answer.
Thank you. The next question is from the Lansing for Palestine BDS Working Group. As you may know, former Michigan Governor Snyder previously signed 2 anti-BDS bills into law, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which prohibits contracts from the state of Michigan with business relations, which prohibits business relations between public entities of the state of Michigan and companies or organizations that practice BDS policies. So in effect, the state of Michigan has sanctioned BDS and anybody who pursues BDS. 2 weeks ago now, the International Court of Justice has determined that Israel's occupation of Gaza and the West Bank is illegal and that Israel's policies amount to apartheid, and called on all nation states to end their support for the illegal occupation. In other words, the ICJ has now called for BDS against Israel by the nations of the world. So we have a bit of a bind here. How do you think Michigan, the state of Michigan, ought to respond to this call from the International Court of Justice, given our existing anti-BDS laws on the record?
Right. Well, a couple things. Number one, when I was in college at Brown University, I participated in occupying our administrative hall and presidential offices in protest of apartheid, in encouraging Brown University to divest. I believe that those types of economic sanctions are warranted and appropriate in situations such as apartheid style regimes. Now, being mindful of that, I'm running for a federal office, So I want everybody to be clear because everybody has to understand the difference. My U.S. Senate seat will not control Michigan State's policies and those orders. I will not have a say in the Michigan legislature about that. Now, certainly, as a U.S. Senator, I can weigh in and I can express my opinion, express my views, but I will not be able to impact and affect that from my position. My position is a federal position. Now, we've talked about we haven't talked about a major difference between me and my opponent in this race. And you just mentioned what would be a very clear major difference, because 2 weeks ago, it was about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month, she voted to sanction the ICC for deeming Netanyahu's actions, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. Now, that body was not sanctioned when using the same criteria against Putin or any of the dictators in Africa that it's deemed war crimes, or even you go way back to Milosevic or anything like that. But all of a sudden, it's an illegitimate body with an illegitimate criteria for those sanctions. I completely disagree with that vote. She voted with MAGA Republicans on that. And I also disagree with the vote that she made most recently, which was not to fund the State Department to confirm the Gaza Health Ministry records of injury and death toll. I don't even see how you make that vote. I don't see how you make that vote. We don't want to know the truth. We don't want to know exactly. We don't want to confirm. And the money's going to our own State Department. How do you make that vote? And how would Michigan voters reward someone for making that vote? I don't understand it. With their vote, I don't understand it. So part of what we have to do here, I think, in this discussion is
I want to invite the audience, if you do have any questions, now would be a good time to start thinking about getting them on your paper and getting them up. I think we're only going to have Mr. Harper till 7:30, so I've got some more here, but we can sprinkle in some others if we'd like. Yes, Hill, can you hear me? You are frozen on our end, but can you say something?
Oh, I was check. Can you hear me? Am I back? I see one thumb going up by Gloria Switzer. It's a beautiful thumb. You're amazing. Okay, good. I'm glad you can hear. I was just going to say, since we don't have a ton of time, and, this primary is between two people, we have to understand that, I don't know if people want to talk about some of the differences. I know since most of you live in the Lansing area, you're pretty familiar with my opponent in this race, and maybe you're very familiar with some of her votes and stances. So, maybe that's not necessary. But in many of the places and audiences I go, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't familiar with her and many of these very problematic votes she's made. And I have to spend a lot of time talking about that. And people are shocked in many ways. And that's what's been so sad about not having debates, and the fact that the media and the Michigan Democratic Party establishment has allowed her to get away with that and not applied pressure to have debates. This is the first truly open U.S. Senate seat in Michigan in nearly 3 decades. And we're not going to debate in the primary? It's the first real Democratic primary in so long. For what is the most important and powerful federal seat in Michigan. And both the media and the establishment were complicit in not allowing debates. But here's the good thing, everybody. Here's the good thing, and I don't want to be gloom and doom. We have 3 days until this primary. And it's become very clear to me and most of the people on my campaign that if we turn out the vote, we will win. Turning out the vote in key constituency groups that many of whom ordinarily don't vote in primaries. That's the key here. We need large African-American turnout. We need large turnout from the Arab and Muslim community. We need large turnout from the different immigrant communities. We need large turnout from progressives. We need large turnout from young people. We need large turnout from environmentalists, et cetera. If we get turnout in these different constituency groups, we can be victorious here. And that's what we're fighting to do. And that's what we really are spending our time. That's why I'm about to go to the Aretha Franklin Amphitheater and hopefully speak to about 7,000 people very quickly about getting out the vote, then Dearborn Homecoming and try to get there, try to get in front of as many people because we know so many people don't vote in primaries. They think the general election is more important when it's actually the primary is more important.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So the next question that we had was just continuing on this thread about foreign policy. Who would you look to for guidance on foreign policy issues? Who are the advisors or the communities that you would take your cues from?
Well, I've already said that I would have in my senior staff, either chief of staff or deputy chief of staff, someone from the Arab Muslim community, because that is lacking in the United States Senate right now. There was no one at that level in any office in the U.S. Senate. And I've also said that I would look to people that I have a great deal of respect for that have actually endorsed me in this race. People like Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed, people like Hassan Sheikh, people like Wanda Hamoud, Nasser Beydoun, Bill Bazzi, the mayor of Dearborn Heights, Osama Siblani, Assad Turfi, Abbas Alawi, people that I've developed relationships with, people that I trust, people that I have friendships with. But remember, foreign policy is not just about the Middle East. We talk about China. We talk about, obviously, Ukraine and Europe. We talk about our relationships at the border with both Mexico, Canada, and extended. And so I want to have an extremely diverse group. Many people don't realize that senators, depending on how they allocate their budget, can hire between 60 to 100 people. And people are going to know it's my Senate office because it's going to be extremely diverse in terms of lived experience, in terms of gender, in terms of identity, in terms of culture, in terms of race and religion. And everyone's going to have a voice because voices matter, and people being inclusion matters, and representation matters, and all of that. And so that's a very important piece here. And also I want to underpin this. The vast majority of people don't know anyone who works in their Senate offices. Why? Because most of those people aren't sourced from their communities. And in fact, oftentimes the establishment heads of parties tell folks, oh, such and such raised $100,000 for us in California. Their son, daughters graduated from Georgetown, hire them as a legislative aide. That's not going to work for me. I'm not going to be Chuck Schumer's lackey. And that's not why I'm running. I'm running to represent people. And in fact, I'm running to hold both parties accountable because in many cases, both parties have been derelict in different ways to communities that I'm associated with and I care about. And so I'm going to have advisors and folks as part of my Senate office that are from the communities, and that I trust. And just much like my campaign staff, it'll be very similar.
Thank you. I've got two more questions here, and then I've got one from the audience. Invite once more if anybody wants to try to slide one in. This is probably your last chance. The next question is about immigration. And we know that migration is a consequence of climate change, can be a consequence of war, can also be a consequence of economic conditions, which are fueled in the Americas and worldwide by U.S. trade policy. So given that much of the immigration to the United States is actually a consequence of our actions, does this give the United States a responsibility to welcome immigrants and support them rather than turn them away at our border?
So we have a responsibility to continue to be a country of immigrants. And that's what we need to do. It's our charge and what we should continue to do. We grossly underfund our immigration program. And so let's be clear. We have to have a secure border. Okay? The amount of fentanyl crossing our border and actually killing people is horrendous right now. Horrendous. That has to be stopped. Okay? And let's be honest as well. In many cases, we don't know who's crossing our border, and there are people who come to do harm. That's real. Now, it's not to the extent of way of propaganda that folks are trying to sell, but the vast majority of people want a secure border, but they also want an efficient pathway to legal immigration. And right now we don't have that. We have to have more folks that are judges, more folks that are case file reviewers, more folks that can help. And when I say more, I'm talking about thousands more that can help create an efficient pathway to legal immigration that is fair and balanced. Another thing we do know is that certain countries, particularly countries of highly melanated people, are completely discriminated against when it comes to immigration and the ability to immigrate legally. And so we have to have a completely fair, unbiased, unracist, uncultural biased process for immigration. What does that look like? It looks like securing the border. It also looks like spending on, yes, you do need more border security. You can use technology that exists to create a safer and more secure border. You can have more Border Patrol agents using and utilizing that technology. You can have humane and clear ways and protocols to deal with folks. But also, if we actually make the process significantly more efficient. Remember, I'm the father of an 8-year-old. And as the question stated, I completely understand the idea of needing and or wanting to find a better, safer place for your children and to raise a family, particularly if you're in a place where that's virtually impossible. And if you look at the process of 8-year wait times, 10-year, 12-year, 14 years, what are we doing? Of course, you're going to figure out and want to do it in a completely different way. Because 8 years is too long. 4 years is too long. And so we need efficient, and that means we need to pour significantly more resources and get rid of the propaganda, get rid of the shaming and blaming and the idea that we can use language against immigrants when we are a country of immigrants. It's ridiculous. And so I am fully in favor of extremely significant rises in spending on immigration and the border and having a fair and balanced policy around that and a humane policy that is grounded in civil and human rights first, and the processing of files extremely and much more efficient.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. I have a follow-up on that came from the audience. I hear you alluding to this, but I think people will appreciate hearing you say it directly. If you have a position specifically on reducing processing times for immigration and normalization for spouses of U.S. citizens.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That has to be at the top of the list. And just to be clear, you build all of these things in at the same time. In other words, I met someone during this campaign who lost a child to fentanyl. And they're not making fentanyl in that person's neighborhood. They're not manufacturing. It's coming in, and it shouldn't. And we shouldn't be living in a world where it is. And those two things aren't mutually exclusive, even though there are people out there politically that try to make it seem like it is. Like, you can't have an efficient spousal and family immigration program that brings people in legally and efficiently and quickly and safely and stop fentanyl from just pouring across our borders. You know, those two things can actually happen at the same time. Two things can be true at once. And so the answer to that question is yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're on the second to last question. This is a bit of a, I think, maybe a less familiar issue for some of us in the U.S. But we're turning to the issue of climate change and the task of transitioning not just the U.S., but the whole world energy system to renewable and low emissions energy. And one of the challenges to this energy transition in the global South is the lack of investment capital. And so countries of the global South have been asking for, sometimes it's called the payment of climate debt, or other times it's just referred to as climate finance in the form of grants or even concessionary low interest loans from the US and other wealthy nations to support the energy transition in the South. Because otherwise they're going to go with the cheaper option, and often that's still fossil fuels.
Okay.
And we need huge investment to make the whole world renewable. So there's actually a United Nations fund for this purpose called the Green Climate Fund, but it's raised only $9.5 billion out of the several hundred billion dollars that are needed. Honestly, I think it actually runs to the trillions, but they've raised $9.5 billion from the wealthy countries of the world, which is honestly just an embarrassment. So would you support increased U.S. support? You know, I'd say on the order of hundreds of billions of dollars is actually what's needed and appropriate for the Green Climate Fund.
I certainly would support that if we take care of home first. And folks, there are infrastructure spending that we have to do when it comes to education and public education here, that people claim we don't have the money for that. We do have the money for that. There's spending that we have to do around healthcare, to have universal healthcare that includes mental health care, that includes vision, that includes dental. There is a cost there. Now, the cost isn't extreme as the fear mongers would have you say, because we changed the incentive structure and the incentive model out of a sick care system to a truly healthcare system. Obviously, we can get deeper into what that means, but that's the thing. And so there's a significant, and then also just pure infrastructure and job creation investment here, as well as spending, as we just mentioned, on the border and immigration. And so I will prioritize those. And also clean energy here. And also, for instance, I'm the only candidate in this race that's calling down for the shutdown of Line 5. There's already been 31 breaches of Line 5. We have 21% of the world's fresh surface water supply touching Michigan shores, yet we're playing in a lot, and 80% of the energy benefit goes to Canada. Enbridge is a Canadian company that already poisoned the Kalamazoo River in 2010, yet we, because of their undue influence as big oil, big energy, on our politics, are playing with this idea of encapsulation, which experts who actually consulted with me told me that that's extremely dangerous, because if something catastrophic happens with encapsulation and there's a major breach, it is disastrous. And so there are plenty of things that we have to do here as far as clean energy, as far as infrastructure spending, and as far as education, healthcare, et cetera, that I want to see us to do, because we haven't been taking care of that. We have a mass incarceration crisis where we are locking up an inordinate amount of poor people across this country. We're talking about we're 5% of the world's population, but we hold 25% of the world's inmates. We know that every dollar spent on early childhood education pays you back $8 later. So all that's to say, many of those things are the things I'm interested in investing in here. Two things can be true at the same time. We can do those things and we can support international clean energy and international clean energy programs such as that. So I would be in favor of stepping up that investment, particularly under the lens that just—
Thank you, Mr. Harper.
2 months.
This is going to be the last question. I'm going to take the question from the chat and ask. You're breaking up on us here.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
I think it's on, this one might be on his end.
Gloria can hear me better than you guys clearly. And Leanne in Traverse City. Hey, Leanne, can I just tell you something real quick? The Grand Traverse Dems have totally blocked me from being able to interact with folks. I've tried so many ways, and whoever that guy that runs the Grand Traverse Dems, they shut me down. In fact, they had the audacity to tell my campaign that most of us have already made a decision and we're not interested in hearing from Mr. Harper. And so that's the Grand Traverse Democratic Party, Democratic Club. It's outrageous. And so I've had trouble breaking in and meeting people in Traverse City because quite often my ability to meet people comes through the Democratic clubs. And, you know, there was nothing I could do. I really wanted to meet more people in Traverse City. I've made many trips there. I took my son to Great Wolf Lodge there, and I've made many trips there. I climbed Sleeping Bear.
What's his name? I'm going to threaten to get my donation back.
Whoever he runs.
Okay.
He runs it.
Hey there, Hill. Our system blinked here, so I'm going to give it back to you for a last word, and I'm going to take the question from the chat, which is, what's the best thing? Anybody who's reminding their neighbors and friends to vote in the next 3 days, what would you say is the number one reason why they should vote for you rather than Elissa Slotkin?
You know, everybody cares about different issues, but the most important thing that I think folks have to remember is that this is the first truly open Democratic primary for a U.S. Senate seat we've had in nearly 30 years, and it may not come again for another 30 years. And if you really want your next senator to be somebody from the CIA that's only worked in basically either an elected office or the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, we need more diversity in the U.S. Senate. We need more diverse lived experience. If I'm elected, I'll be the only active union member in the whole Senate. I'd be only one of 2 parents of an elementary age child in the whole Senate. The number one cause of death of children today is gun violence. Our public education system is being ravaged, and we don't have any representation of a parent that has kids except for one person right now. I'd be only the second. I'd be only one of a handful of small business owners, and small businesses are the engine of every local community's economy. We don't need another career government politician in the U.S. Senate who's going to be there for 40 years if she wins. It's just not what we need. We need real representation. And, you know, the first 3 words of the Michigan Constitution, the first 3 words of the U.S. Constitution are exactly the same. We the people. It doesn't say we the super PAC. It doesn't say we the politician. It doesn't say we the big donor. Or it doesn't say we special interest. It says we the people. And my candidacy is putting people first. And I want to walk in there with everybody. And the one thing that shows that is that we've been taking a chair all over the state, and people have been signing this chair, and I couldn't be more proud. The other senator is going to think I sit in a chair covered in graffiti, because that's going to be the chair I sit in the U.S. Senate, because I truly believe it's the group of us and all of us going there collectively Dr. King said, we're all tied together in a single garment of mutual destiny. We all are in this together. And to the extent, if Leanne's not doing well in Traverse City, or Anna Martinez is not doing well, or Muhammad Ashri's not doing well, or Claudette's not doing well, then I'm not doing well. We're not doing well. And so that's it. And this is so critical. This is so critical. So I'll leave it there. And Spice is here too. This is my son's dog, Spice, who just showed up. Spice wants good things too.
That is adorable. Wow. Hill Harper, thank you so much. Let's give Hill a round of applause. And an even bigger round of applause for Spice.
Yeah, Spice. Yeah, Spice.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right, we're going to let you go, sir, and go to your next event, but we appreciate you working with the tech hiccups and everything you had to do to be here with us. Thank you one more time.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time. This is democracy. Please turn out the vote. Please get 10, 20 people to vote. You can even use your phones. Go down 100 people and ask them to take 10 people to the polls. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think that's our event, but on your way out, take a minute just to speak with your neighbor or whoever you came with, and take the opportunity to think about what you heard. And just don't forget to reflect and digest what you learned about our candidates and any of the issues. And I'll look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you again to all the event sponsors. Thank you to everybody who has been online, who joined us online. We love you.